Hello and welcome. My name is Bogdan, and today we're going to walk through how to install FileMaker Server in a Docker container. As I mentioned before, we're going to install FileMaker Server inside a Docker container running on Ubuntu 24. The best part of this setup is how simple this installation is. No complicated steps, no extra tools. It also helps you to use your hardware better and even run multiple FileMaker Server instances on the same machine. Don't worry if it sounds new. You will know exactly what I mean in just a moment. Let's go step by step. In this chapter of the video, we're working on a server running Ubuntu 24. And here's the key point. Ubuntu 24 is fully supported by FileMaker Server 22. That means we can install it with confidence, knowing everything is officially compatible and will run as expected. On the screen, you can see the zip package that comes officially from Claris. So I'll extract the package. And now you can see the installer folder that Claris provides for FileMaker on Ubuntu. These are the files you would normally use for a direct local installation on the server. At the top, there is a folder named Docker. It includes everything we need to deploy FileMaker Server 22 inside a Docker container. In other words, a more flexible, modern, and efficient way to run your server. Let's take a look inside. Here we've got the resource folder, the Docker file, and the FileMaker Docker installer shell script. This script basically automates the whole installation, so you don't have to configure everything by hand. And of course, there's a README file that guides you throughout the process step by step. In summary, we have two options: the classical local installation and the Docker option that it's more modern, flexible, and easier to move between systems. Both work perfectly on Ubuntu 24 with full FileMaker support. Before we start, let's take a quick look to the server that we are going to use for this installation. Ubuntu 24.04 operating system, an Intel Core i7-4790K processor, 32 GB of RAM, and 1.5 TB of SSD storage. As you can see, the machine is pretty modest. It's an i7-4970K with 32 GB of RAM. This processor is more than 10 years old, but still works for this kind of jobs. Now that we saw the system, let's start with basic checks before begin the installation. The first thing you want to do is to check if the IP address is free. In my case, I'm going to use 192.168.0.98. I start with a quick ping. If the IP replies, it means something already is using it. If it doesn't reply, it might be free, but that it's not always reliable because some devices block ping. So the second check is using Nmap to scan the whole network. I have here prepared already the command. If your IP doesn't show up in the scan, there is a good chance. And the last check is to make sure Docker hasn't already assigned that IP to another container on this machine. This matters especially when multiple people are working with Docker on the same server. So I will use Docker network command list, and I see here there is a FileMaker Server network. I can inspect the network using Docker network inspect. Also remember, containers on Mac VLAN usually can't talk back to the host directly. So if you assign an IP already used, things just won't work. So in this case, the IP I want is free. We're good to go. After reserving the IP, the next step is to edit the bash script included in the installer. This script does everything automatically. First, it creates the Mac VLAN network. So the container gets its own IP on the same local network. Then create the container. After that is downloading the Ubuntu image defined on the Docker file. And finally, it's install the FileMaker server inside the container. The goal is simple. Install it quick, easy, and repeatable with no manual errors. Now we're going to edit the file that get the installation ready. I'm using Visual Studio Code to edit it. So we just open Visual Studio Code, open the folder, and open the file. So the variable primary is decide if it's the main server or not. So we set it to 1. Next, the number of secondary. We set it to 0. That goes to 0 because we want only the main server for now. IP address is the IP we want the container to use. So I put in my case, 98. Network name, we leave it as it is. Then we set the username and the password. For the admin console. I'm just using admin for now, but obviously you can change that later. Debug goes to 1. So we can see everything happening during the install. Close conflict goes to 1. This remove any previous container with the same name. Just be careful because this can delete all data if it exists. And here you can also see the container is going to use 2 CPUs and 8 GB of RAM, which is more than enough for testing. Another useful step that I'm using in deployment is to force Docker to rebuild the container every time we install. This avoids using an old image stored in the local cache. When repository change and the package get updated, older image can cause error during the installation. Rebuild and fresh image each time give us a clean and consistent install with no surprises. Now let's see how to enable this setting. To make the Docker rebuild the Ubuntu container, we need to tweak the install script a bit. First, look for the function called setup. Open the sidebar on the left, the outline section. That's where you will see a list of functions and variables in this file. Inside the setup function, we will find the variable outcome. Set to 0. The second one. By doing this, Docker will rebuild the container instead of reusing an old one. Next, go to line 303. Disable the cache and force download. This tells Docker to rebuild everything from the scratch and not to use anything stored locally. And done. Now everything is ready and configured. Before we start, we need to copy the .deb file from FileMaker installation folder into the Docker folder. Once it's copied, we can go ahead and run the installation. The first thing we need to do is to copy the .deb file from the local installer folder into the Docker folder. The deb file is basically the FileMaker Server installer. Once we've copied the file, we can start the installation. So we copy it here. To run the installation, we just execute the script, this script with sudo, and we add the option 1. As you can see, the installation failed. So let's check what happened. I also noticed that Docker didn't build a new fresh container. And here's the issue. The installation failed because I didn't set the admin console pin. So we get back to installer script and fix that. While we're there, we also check the Docker image settings. Okay, I forgot to save the file. This is one of the issues. Let's set the pin for the admin console. We set 1, 2, 3, 4, and we save the file. So we fix that, save the file, and run the installer again. This time I can see that Docker rebuilt the correct container and remove the old one. Everything cleanly. Removing the old network. From the previous try. Now everything looks good. The installer even shows the URL for the admin console. The installation is complete. I will jump to another computer to check the installation. As I mentioned earlier, I switched to another computer because FileMaker Pro doesn't exist on Ubuntu. I really wish to have a FileMaker Pro client for Linux. It would make perfect sense. But there is some great news. The API fees is gone. Well done, Clarice. So here is how we check our FileMaker server inside the Docker container it's running. First, open the browser and go to the address provided by the installer. Log in with your credentials, accept the certificate, and that's it. If you can see the main FileMaker server dashboard, it means everything is running perfectly inside the container. Now it's time to check everything we've done. First step, open the browser. I'm using Chrome, mostly because all my stuff already syncs with Google. Next, go to the address provided by the installer. I've got mine right here. Chrome will probably warn you that the connection isn't secure. That's fine for now. I'll confirm it since I don't have a SSL certificate. But don't do this on unknown or public address. Now I will enter my credentials. FileMaker is asking me to load a certificate. I will pick the default one for now because I didn't have one. I accept the risk. And that's it, we're in. The main FileMaker server console is up and running, which means everything inside the container is working perfectly. The second check is to upload a FileMaker file to the server. So I'm opening FileMaker Pro. Selecting Upload to Host. First I enter my credentials. Okay. Then I pick the file I want to upload. A few seconds later, done. The file is successfully uploaded to the server. Then I can open the file, only checking Open with FileMaker Pro. I will enter my credential for the file. And yes, the file opened perfectly. That means the whole setup is running smoothly inside the container. FileMaker Server now it's fully installed and it's running inside the Docker container. If I ever need to deploy in another server, I just copy the Docker folder and run it. That's it. Simple like that. If you found this video helpful, give it a thumb up and subscribe. It's free for you and really help me to create content like this. In the next video, I will take a look at how FileMaker AI works. We'll test what can actually do, what's still missing, and see if it can really compete with Llama. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.